Hi, it's Christina with the Sisyphean Journal, responding to another excellent Dark Horse podcast video. This one looking at the crappy quality of a study that supposedly shows that the COVID vaccine does not impact women's future reproductive health. That was the conclusion of the study. Do you know what the construction of the study was? They looked at 3 menstrual cycles prior to the vaccine and 1 menstrual cycle after the vaccine. And from that, they concluded that there's no long-range problems. Well, you didn't look long-range. So if you don't look for it, you're not going to find it, right? So, but this just puts me in mind of all the studies that get touted as showing how wonderful abortion is. The studies that show that women only feel relief after an abortion, those are typically studies based on asking the woman as she's walking out of the clinic, how do you feel? Relieved. Well, that's not looking long term. That's not how does she feel if she tries to get pregnant later and she can't get pregnant? Or how does she feel she has a miscarriage later? Or, how does she feel if she finds out after the abortion that her medical condition could have been treated? They exclude pretty much everybody who has, they exclude long-term anything. So of course they're not going to show any long-term psychological problems because they're not looking long-term. They're looking at, she gets off the table, oh, I'm glad that's over with. Oh, she feels nothing but relief. Never any psychological problems. There were 2 studies they did in California to demonstrate the safety of abortion. One was right after abortion was legalized. When abortion was legalized in California prior to Roe versus Wade, they had to be performed in a hospital. Well, what did they do? They said, oh, look, there's fewer hospitalizations for abortion complications. Clearly, it became much safer. Well, if she's already in a hospital when she has the complications, you're not going to admit her. So you just eliminated everybody whose complications show up during about the first 24 hours. It's ridiculous. And there was another study where they took Medi-Cal women, the medical assistants for the state. They took the women who had just had normal vaginal deliveries and checked their abortion history. And they found no statistically significant differences in labor, how long they were in labor between the women who had previous abortions and the women who hadn't had previous abortions. Well, you've just eliminated everybody who had pregnancy problems. You eliminated all the women who had complications and needed hysterectomies. You've eliminated everybody who had uterine adhesions that made it impossible to get pregnant. Everybody who miscarried. Everybody who had an incompetent cervix and wound up going into premature labor. Everybody with placenta previa, placenta abrupta. You eliminated women who had a uterine rupture, so their doctors insisted on doing a C-section the next time they wanted to have a baby because of fear of another uterine rupture. So they do this study where they deliberately eliminated all the women who had reproductive fallout from their abortions from the study and used it to conclude that there's no reproductive fallout from the abortions. So, the CDC has a very long history of pulling this crap. You have to look at every single study, and it doesn't just apply to the CDC. When you see a medical study claiming X, Y, or Z, you have to look at it really closely, look at the study method, and look at whether the claim even matches what they found. Because in this one that Heather cites, where they said there's no long-term problems from the vaccine. Well, of course there's no long-term problems because they didn't look long-term. Look carefully at the studies. How were they constructed? How was the data analyzed? Was this really valid, or was this something where they deliberately constructed it so that they can announce that they didn't find something that they weren't even looking for?